really just wanted to start off and ask if there were any, or a little bit of background about how you got started in the industry. I know that we can obviously pull up one of your bios, but would love to hear it in your own words.
Sure. In terms of how did I get started? Well, it wasn't a grand plan. It was a total accident. Remember that probably if you put your three ages together, that would be my age. And therefore, there was no marketing course. There was no marketing degree. Those sort of things didn't exist. So I was working in London for Columbia Pictures, actually. My boss decided to move to Paris, and he introduced me to his Canadian property mogul friend who needed a Miss Moneypenny. You probably don't know who Miss Moneypenny is, do you? No, it's all right. It's fine. You could Google it, but maybe not. Have you ever seen a James Bond movie?
Yes, that we've seen.
You would know who Moneypenny was. So the keeper of all the secrets, the person who actually does everything, but is not visible. So I worked for him for a while and made contacts, but then it was quite difficult in England in the early 70s. It was the winter of our discontent and things were very bad. And so I decided I had traveled a lot, 43,000 miles, 7 months, $1,200. So then Toronto was one of the places I went to, and I saw it as a place of great opportunity. So I moved there, and I think the big breakthrough there, I mean, I had been connected with the property industry in London, but the big breakthrough was I was involved in the first for sale mixed use development in Toronto. And it was residential, very high end, office and retail. And that, with no experience at all, I was thrown in on the deep end, and I enjoyed it. I was asked to sell the residential, which was considered an impossible sale then, because it was leasehold. And no matter, it was a 99-year lease. Anyway, from there, I became a VP at that company at 25. So that felt pretty good. And wow. I was very lucky. So that's really how I started in the bigger picture. I'd been in the periphery for a few years prior to that.
Oh, wow. So that kind of seems like so you had moved to Toronto. It seems like a defining moment. You had that opportunity and became VP. When did you actually move over to Vancouver?
30 years ago. So I was in Toronto for about 16 years, working mostly in residential development. And I worked in-house for developers. And then I also worked with a very small, but, pretty impressive project marketing company that's not around anymore. And all my projects were in the US. So Boston, my circuit was every week, Boston, Washington, Chicago, New York. And I was able to run those jobs from a marketing and sales perspective, that is, from Toronto, or I was physically there. Because, in those days, the condominium market in the US hardly existed. I worked on the second condo ever in New York because they were co-ops then. And people didn't really know what condominiums were and weren't sure that they could trust them. And so the most experienced people in the condominium world, if you like, were actually in Toronto at that time. So
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
But Toronto was a big leader in that industry.
Mm-hmm. And then, I mean, that kind of in itself stands out to me as a moment, but was there anything along the line or along your career that stood out as a moment where you said, like, this is a defining moment I learned from, or I had to really push the boundaries or step up with courage and make a change?
Well, I mean, there are several for me personally moments, but I will say, I think probably the big thing was I had been in the industry for a long time already, and in Vancouver for a while, and I had a perfectly good job with a perfectly good company, but the corporate culture and scope didn't really work for me. And so it wasn't about money or anything like that, but I knew I needed to not be there. So I had no plans, and I leapt into the void without a plan, which is quite unlike me if you know me. So that was, pretty defining. I suppose it's like moving to Toronto. Who knows? Maybe I'll get a job, maybe I won't, type of thing. So in doing that, I found what was fascinating is, you don't really always know what people think of you until maybe you go and do something, and then you find out. It's not always lovely. But at that time, in 48 hours after leaping into the void, I received 9 job offers, and some of them were very good, and they weren't all in Vancouver. They were in the US or back east or wherever, and in Vancouver. And I decided to take a chunk of time to consider them all. And I gave myself 3 months, and I met with everybody that I could. And one very good friend of mine in our industry said to me, I don't think you should take any of these jobs. They're good, but I don't think you should do that, because I don't think it'll make you happy. What you should do is start your own thing, get one client, and you will probably end up working with all of these people as a consultant, and you'll have much more fun. That was the best advice I've ever received. And I went and got that one client, and the rest is history. So that was a big moment for me. I mean, I have another different type of one where a client of mine was about to launch for them their biggest project ever. It was in downtown Vancouver, in a sort of then marginal location, now very superior. And I came up with an idea for doing very experimental floor plans, product design, et cetera, and we built this whole program around this product. And 3 days before we were due to open, the developer comes around and wants to go through everything in the sales office to make sure it's all great. And he thinks twice about the product. And we're talking about the whole program goes out the window if that product is gone.
Oh my gosh.
And so you have to do your lie on the railway tracks movement, shall we say. And to his credit, he had the courage to say, okay, you've convinced me, we'll do it. And it became, the best selling. It won every award in the book. It was a fantastic success. But he wasn't wrong to question it, but that was fairly defining, shall I say.
Wow. I don't want to know what the turnaround time on that was. It's certainly probably pretty stressful moment in your career.
Yeah, it was well, good. The stress was fairly short-lived, although it was quite extreme. Mm-hmm. But I think everybody, I bet other people have a similar story to that type of thing. That, you in the end, it's their money, not yours, if you're a consultant, and you have to respect their wishes. It just, I suppose, depends how much passion you've got.
And you hope it goes well, and it did in this case.
Well, yes.
Now, we know, you've been in the industry for many years, and it's really propelled your success. And what we're curious about is, what really caused you to stay motivated in the same industry? We know some people who have jumped around a lot, but it seems like you've been pretty true to your path. How does that look?
Well, I have been pretty true to my path. I did take a time out years ago in Toronto for 18 months because the company that I worked for, there were 2 principals that I held dear, 2 people, and they decided to dissolve their partnership, and both of them offered me a job. So there was no good decision here. So I decided to say no to both. And I actually went to work in a different industry, which I loathed. And it was very successful. Took them from 18 million wholesale from 8 to 18 million wholesale in that period of time, which was quite remarkable. But it wasn't an industry I cared for. And so the reason I stay true to my path for so many years is because I know that what I do now is what I do best. And so I don't doubt that. And not everybody has had the opportunity to leave an industry and return to it without losing traction. And I've been fortunate in that way. But, what you asked me really, what keeps you in it, and I quote Thomas Jefferson, who you'll probably have to look up as well, anyway, former president, and a very extraordinary man. And he once said, I may be an old man, but a young gardener I will always be. And what he meant is that nature always has something to teach him. Well, guess what? It's the same with our industry. It's going to change. It's good that it changes. It keeps us healthy. It will surprise us just like nature. It will do things you never expect it to do. And that change that is always happening is, I think it's fairly inspirational. It certainly, keeps you up at night, but it also gets you up in the morning. So it's truly engaging to me.
Wow, that was very beautifully said, Dianna. My next question was going to be what your leadership lesson would be for someone. And I feel like that was a leadership lesson right there. Beautiful quote.
Well, thank you. Leadership is such, it means so many different things for different people. And also you need leaders for certain types of situations and not others. You can be a great prime minister for a certain time and a terrible one for another era, as it were. But I think there would be three things I'd want to say to people. One would be ask a lot of questions. Every city in Canada is like a village. Get to know your neighbors, build your network, and don't stay in a silo. It's very easy now, especially because we can't go out and meet people the way that we used to, for us to look inward instead of outward. And so I think if you want to be a leader, you can't stay in a silo. You've got to look out. The other thing, which is very personal to me, that I truly believe in, is be a door opener. And by that, I mean, help people who need some help. Everybody at some point in their career needs a little bit of help and advice. And it costs you nothing, and it means everything to them. And, even when I was at my absolute busiest in my career, every 2 weeks, I either spoke to somebody on the phone, answered an email, or had a cup of coffee with somebody who needed some help and advice. And some of those people actually have turned out to be presidents and very senior executives of companies. And they became my client. Now, that's not why I did it, because it takes quite a long time from being very junior to become the president of the company. But that's really why relationships for me have been so important. And I think it's selfish not to give somebody help if they ask for it. They've got to ask the right way, and they have to be respectful of your time. And make sure you give them something to go away with in terms of brain power. I suppose the last thing would be, be good to people on the way up, because you're sure to meet them on the way down.
Wow. Well said. We really hope that this piece is read by some younger women in the industry that are stepping in. And we know that it's probably a little bit different today than it was years ago. Being a female in the industry, the barriers are a little bit different. But I guess from all of the wisdom that you've acquired, is there one piece of advice you would give a prospective woman who's looking to get into leadership in the real estate space?
Well, I think that I would say you really need to love what you do. If you have no passion, you have no place, and get out of it and go work in another industry. Because otherwise it's a slog and it's not interesting. And also you're not going to be much fun to be around. So I think that having that passion is very important. I think, I talked about questions before. I think it's really okay not to know the answer. A lot of us can, be embarrassed that we don't know the answer. It's okay to say, I don't know. That's a great question. No one asked me that before. how important is it to know the answer? Very. Okay, well, I'm going to go and get the answer and find out. So I think that's very important. And I think something else I found, and again, this is sort of me personally, it might not work for everybody, but and it's more challenging nowadays, but there's strength in silence. So for example, in the old days, you were in big boardrooms, let's say, and now they're all clamoring for attention on this little tiny screen. And a lot of younger people are, they want to show and prove that they're eager, that they're the best, that they're keen, that they're bright, that they're all these good things. But sometimes they fail to shut up. And, it's more powerful, I found, to be in a meeting and they're going around the room asking, or everybody's leaping in, jumping in with their answers, some of them not completely thought through, et cetera, et cetera. And if you are quiet, sometimes your silence is in fact conspicuous.
Mm-hmm.
And if the leader of the meeting is a good leader, that leader will say, what do you think? And that's your moment to say, have you ever thought of doing this? Or have we ever done this? And it's your eureka moment when everybody's so exhausted from all their own ideas that they're finally going to pay attention to yours. So that's a very long-winded answer. And I'm not sure I answered your actual question, but it's my segue.
I feel like that is such a powerful thing. And you're so right. Maybe now, especially with people in our generation, there is this competition for a voice, and it comes from growing up on our cell phones with social media. Everyone's trying to outdo the next person. I'm sure I've seen that translate into a boardroom where it feels like we're competing against each other, but really you're right, sometimes it's the silence that really has more power than the person that doesn't really think through their responses.
Right. And that's when you can have your best moments, because you've got everybody's attention. So it can be powerful. As I said, this is a personal thing for me. May not be for every person. But I find it can be kind of exhausting to be in a mass Zoom call with everybody. I feel like it's like signage pollution on a site, Too much.
Too much. Amazing. Well, being mindful of time,
Okay.
we've got one more question, and this is really what excites you about the future of real estate? It could be anything. We'd love to hear it.
Well, I should tell you that clearly I'm semi-retired at this point in time. I still do assignments that interest me. And a lot of them are, they're really sort of 10,000-foot corporate consulting, more than project stuff. But I think what excites me, obviously, is that in difficult times, there is opportunity. And obviously, COVID is a very difficult time, and it provides us with a lot of challenges. And we're going to have to change a lot in order to meet those challenges, because if it's not COVID, it'll be something else, another one, God forbid, but other things will happen. So looking at the sea change in how young people view housing, and how they will consider how they live, where they live, how they work, and all of that sort of thing. The home itself, which is an area obviously that interests me a great deal, becomes quite a fixation is not the right word, but it's a very big focus for people, and it's a very big concern. So I'm excited by looking forward to seeing the changes in product planning, in locations that may have been overlooked in the past, rising up and becoming interesting centers, and seeing how my colleagues in the industry deal with that from a product perspective. So.
I will be interested to also see whether, and I'm sure maybe you're already aware, I'm a little bit further removed from the industry these days, but who's actively completely scrapped their plans, had a high rise and it wasn't built in with a home office, and now are we going to do it? Is it going to be profitable? Probably. It's changed everyone's expectation for what working looks like.
Right. Well, you may remember some years ago, I've worked for many years. I worked with Bosa Properties, and a long time ago, they developed out in University District in Surrey. They developed these transformable floor plans, which, when you think about it, were incredibly prescient at the time, because your 510 square foot home can live like a 1,000 square foot if you have transformable furniture. So they were very much ahead of the curve there, but there'll be lots more. And I think how single family housing will be laid out will also be very different.
Good point.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well,
thank you
so much.
Alex, got any questions?
I had one question. I was just wondering, of all the projects you've worked on, if you have not a favorite, but one that particularly excited you or did something unique.
Well, God, my client would probably kill me if I didn't mention them, right? So I think I would say the next one. It would be hard. I have too many favorite children as far as those buildings are concerned. And I love to drive past them and say, you know what? It was good then. It's really good now.
I'm just thinking back to what you were saying kind of in regards to leadership, as well as the defining moments of your career. I guess it's more of a comment than a question, but I think it is really telling that you focus so much on relationships and interpersonal connections rather than making yourself the biggest voice in the room or grinding it out. I just think that's incredible and really, really great advice.
Thank you. You recognized it for me. That's certainly been what's made things work for me. And it's also made life happier, better. I'm so lucky. All the people I've worked with are wonderful people. We still talk, whether I'm working with them now or not, or never will again. We're friends. And Vancouver is very much a relationship city in terms of working. I think I certainly noticed that when I moved from Toronto. It's not that Toronto isn't, it's just it's a bigger place. So it's harder to have those closer relationships.
Wonderful.
All right.
Thank you so much, Dianna.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Enjoy your weekend.
Yeah.
I shall. Okay. Or as Maggie Smith says, what is a weekend?